Om Vang me manasi pratisthita mano me vachi pratishthitam aviravirma edhi vedasyama ani sthaha shrutam me ma prahasi anena dhitena horatran samdadhami Ritam vadishyami satyam vadishyami tanmamavatu tadvaktaramavatu avatu mam avatu vaktaram Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So this hymn number 1 from the book 5, from the family of Atri Rishis, is the, as Sri Aurobindo writes, a hymn that is Sri Aurobindo's writing, a hymn of the morning sacrifice. The Rishi hymns the awakening of Agni, the divine force, to conscious action in the coming of the dawn. The dawn is representing the Divine Mother, Aditi. It is the illumination of our consciousness in our embodied state. Agni rises towards the luminous paradise. His goal, feeding on the works of the discernment which distributes the gifts and activities of the sacrifice, becomes a pure energy leading our days and ascends to the vastness and the truth. By the truth, he fashions anew our two firmaments, the physical and the mental consciousness. This is the golden affirmation of him in our heavens. Now you can see this kind of royal language immediately, even in the gist of the hymn which Sri Aurobindo gives at the beginning. So there are many things here. It's very packed. Abodhi Agnih Samidha Jananam Pratidhenum Ivayatim Ushasam Yahva Iva Pravayam Ujjihanah Prabhanavah Sisrate Nakam Acha. Abodhi Agnih. Awaken is, and this is in Russian, strength is awake by kindling of the peoples. Let me open another file where there is no Russian. It would be easier for us to handle.
Radhi, we can always read Russian also while you talk in English.
I know, but no need. Here it is. Yeah. Strength is awake by kindling of the peoples. And he fronts the dawn that comes to him as the cow that fosters. He approaches the dawn as the calf, and as Vatsa. That's Pritu Vatsa I was telling you. He approaches her as a child, as a baby to the cow, to feed on her, because the dawn brings all the nourishment. Like mightinesses that rush upward, they're expanding his lusters, advancing mount towards the heavenly level. So, like mightinesses that rush upward to their expanding, his lusters advancing mount towards the heavenly level. Now I will go word by word. Abodhi, awoken or awaken, is awake. It's a passive aorist, passive participle. sorry, passive voice. Abodhi, awaken Agni. Samidha, by the kindling, Jananam, by the kindling of those who are born in the body. So we are all born here in the body. We all have bodies, and we can kindle him, the fire within us, which is hidden within our nature. That aspiration can be kindled by us. Pratidhenum, and towards the cow, Iva, as if, Ayatim, approaching, Ushasam, the dawn. The dawn is the cow approaching, growing in light in the morning. So he leans towards her. He moves towards her, the cow, to feed on her lustrous. Yahva Yiva Pravayamujjihana. And this is translated in many different ways, but Sri Aurobindo gives like mightinesses we that rush upward to their expanding. Yahva, like young energies, as if young energies, Eva, pra, forward, ujjihana, rising upward, vayam. He says maintenances rush. Vayam can be also we, and with longer R at the end. As we, full of energy, rise in the morning, Prabhanava, his flames, Sisrate, move forward towards heaven, Nakam, Acha directly. So we rise in the morning full of energy. Usually we are full of energy in the morning. It depends on how we slept. As the flames rising towards heaven directly. So awaken is the flame by the kindling of those who are born in the body, jhana. Towards the dawn he moves, who in return is approaching him as nourishing cow, her calf. We too, like the flames of light, rise full of power, springing upward towards heaven. Every day is a new adventure for us. Every day is a new evolution, new progress, new approach higher and higher in the levels of consciousness, new achievements. Yeah? There is an interesting subtle association of Agni with beings who are born here on earth in the material body. They kindle him from within themselves, for Agni is their inner and innermost nature. That's why Rishi says, we too rose up like the beams of light of Agni, straight towards heaven. So this association of the flames of Agni and us rising in the morning is that association of the psychological and physical reality. We also rise because the Agni within us is rising, pushing us in the morning to wake up. So he is awakened by the kindling of those who are born in the body, and we also are awakened by him, yeah, in the morning, rising like flames of Agni towards heaven. You can see the deeper sense of it. If you associate this with psychological state of consciousness, you could feel the depth of this understanding of the Rishi. There is nothing here random in this world. Everything works for the progress and evolution of consciousness. Everything supports it every moment. And the morning star, the dawn which comes to us, is the nourishing cow, is the Divine Mother, which brings that light to enlighten us. And our aspiration is rising towards her. In other place, in the other hymn, it is spoken of Agni, that he comes to the dawn like a beggar for delight and knowledge. Agni here is like a beggar. Bhikshu. He is bhikshate. He begs for delight and knowledge from the dawn. And we will see in this hymn how they relate, Agni and Usha, the dawn. The dawn is his mother. Agni is her son. Their relations are very interesting. She feeds him. He is on her growing and becoming more and more luminous and deep, reaching to heavens. This first verse makes association with Agni completely subjective, for it speaks about us, those who are born here in the material body and rising as flames of Agni towards heaven.
Vladimir, just a little question. So Agni is rising as an Agni which is within us is rising, and Usha is making it uh, come into realization, come the whole
She comes
movement
from
through.
above, yes. She comes from above as illumination. He is calling to her. Agni is the only light which is living here day and night. In the night, Agni also lives. It doesn't go away. He is immortal among mortals. The aspiration in us flames in the night and in the day. So we are in the morning, it is that answer of the dawn. She approaches him, he's flaming, yeah? And we are rising higher with her coming, with her nourishment. Abodhi hota yajathaya devan, urdhvognih sumanach pratar asthat, samidhasya rushat adar shipajo, mahandevas tamaso niramochi. Such a profound diction. The priest of our oblation has awakened for sacrifice to the gods. With right mentality in him, strength stands up, exalted in our mornings. He is entirely kindled, red flushing, the mass of him is seen. A great Godhead has been delivered out of the darkness. The priest is awakened to perform the sacrifice to the gods. The flame stood up high in the morning, bearing the right thought. The flaming power of the kindled became visible. The great God was released from the darkness. It is the symbolic and poetic description of the spiritual experience, the awakening of the inner being out of the darkness of material consciousness at the dawn of our spiritual illumination. Thus he is reaching the surface of our consciousness, ready to act, to invite the gods from above. From the light of the dawn, she brings all the gods into the material frame of the physical body for its transformation. It's quite a loaded image. Yeah?
I could not understand much actually. When it said, can you go? Yeah,
Yeah.
I lost the track. So it says the awakening of the in this third line, no, when it's calling upon, when it says that it calls upon the gods, I did not understand that bit.
Yes, Agni is actually here is Hotar. Yes, you remember that first line. Agnimile Purohitam, he's in front. Yajnasya Devam, he is the Lord, this luminous being, the God of the sacrifice of transformation. Ritvijam, who does sacrifice according to the ritu, to the season. Hotaram, he is the Hotar, the Hotri, who invokes all the divine powers. He brings them down. He brings all the gods down into this body. Now that aspiration is calling to the divine powers, and they descend. They obey his will. Sri Aurobindo says that Agni is the symbol of the divine will in us. It wills, and all the divine powers come for transformation, for the sacrifice. Without Agni, there is no change, there is no progress, there is no evolution. First is invocation. We have to invoke, to aspire. If there is no aspiration, no invocation, there is no change. Everything will stay static, unchanged. It is the Agni in us, that flame within us, that heat within us, which is rising towards heaven, which is seeking the heavenly realization, calling to all the divine powers to descend and to transform this being, that the evolution is taking place. Makes sense? Psychologically should make sense, because this is the psychological power within us. There are more things here which are interesting. If we analyze the language, Yajathaya Devan, he comes here, he was awakened to sacrifice, for the sacrificing the gods. The gods are in the direct object. We usually don't translate this in this way. We always say to sacrifice to the gods, because it's just a tradition to speak like this, to think in those terms. But truly speaking, he is here to sacrifice the gods. He is here to bring the divine powers and to sacrifice them here. He is to involve them into this transformational process of our being. They don't want to be sacrificed. They want to stay in their own domains in heaven. They don't want to be brought down into this narrow consciousness and darkness of our unregenerated being. It's a huge work for them. It's a huge responsibility and labor for them. But they cannot reject his will, his command. And he commands them, he brings them down, he drags them down, if you will, for our sake. So that's why it is said, he awaken is the Agni to sacrifice here the gods. He rises up with beautiful, perfect mind in the morning. Pratarastat, he stood up. Samidhasya, and of him kindled, Rushat, shining, burning, Adarshi became visible, Pajas, his substance became visibly shining. Mahandevah, great God, Tamaso Niramochi, was released out of the darkness. Now he has the right to bring those lofty luminous powers above into their action upon earth. You remember our overview how this creation took place. You remember Mother speaks about 2 stages of creation. It's our beginning of our exploration of the Vedic paradigm. The first was these 4 emanations, consciousness in light, bliss, truth, and life. And they were given the right to manifest the divine. And everyone thinking that he is the divine, or believing that he is the divine, disconnected himself gradually from the source and fell into its opposite. So the consciousness in light fell into the darkness, the bliss fell into the suffering, the truth into the falsehood, and life into death. So they fell into their opposites. This is the first stage. Then, Mother says, the Divine Mother, Aditi, turned towards the Supreme and said, look what happened with this first creation. These first emanations fell into their opposite. What shall we do? That's Mother's story, like a fairy tale to the children of the ashram. And he said, you find in me the stronger force of light, of bliss, of truth, and of life, and precipitate that fallen being. Make them plunge into the darkness and bring back those fallen emanations to their full, supreme self-awareness, because they lost it. Redeem them. This is the movement of redemption. That's what sacrifice is about, is to bring those fallen first divine emanations back to their self-awareness. So the Divine Mother looked into the depth of this Supreme and found first the power of the gods. Now, Mother speaks about this in two different places. I'm taking another story which is very interesting, where the gods are kind of understood what they are really. And so she told them, look at this darkness and plunge into it and bring these fallen emanations back to their self-awareness. And they said, no, we can't plunge into this. That means we will lose everything. We will lose ourselves. So they were scared to plunge. They didn't want to go into the darkness. Then, Mother says, she looked deeper into the Supreme and she found the power of love. That power of love which agreed to plunge into the darkness, to bring these fallen emanations back to their self-awareness. And that power of love is that Agni, that hidden sun within the darkness, the flames of which are Agni, that Rudra which is holding on his shoulders the whole manifestation, and whose sun is Agni flaming out and pushing the whole darkness forward towards its accomplishment and evolution and progress. In nature there is a constant burning fire within which is pushing everything forward to develop. And that the sparks of that Agni is our psychic beings. We are the children of that force which descended into the darkness. We represent that descent. We are the sparks, the focal points of this sacrifice. We are Yajamanas. We are those who are doing the sacrifice here, bringing back these fallen emanations to their self-awareness. Yeah.
So we should, so when we say once we surrender, so that means that we should completely surrender and not really resist being a yajamana.
Definitely. It is our purpose. The moment you become aware that you are Yajamana, you are released from the darkness like this Agni. You become conscious in your living. You know why you are here and what you are here to do. You are no more confused anymore about anything. It's a kind of psychic being coming to the front of our physical, mental, and vital consciousness.
So if one really wants to realize their karma, their dharma, then they should become yajamana in a true sense. It's difficult, but I'm just here.
Yeah, I was telling all this story for one reason, to show how this Yajamana relates to the devatas, who are brought by Agni down. So those devatas are stuck in their heavens, in their own typal worlds. They didn't come down, but they're there. And they are needed, it seems, because when they come down, when the Agni, which is burning here, calls to them, to their assistance, to their participation, then they come down. They are pure powers. They are not involved, but they are getting involved. So they come down. So our calling to those powers come together. So finally we found for them some utility, some use for them. You know? We can involve them. Those powers who were never involved, getting involved through the sacrifice. So once they are involved through the sacrifice and do here the work, once they are sacrificed here in the darkness, they attain to the higher consciousness themselves. They rise to the throne, as it is said in the other place of the Veda, from which they can see Aditi and Diti. You remember him to Mitra and Varuna. Mitra and Varuna invoked, they come down, and when they come to the sacrifice, they rise even to higher consciousness, from which they can see the transcendental realms and these worlds, both, the same as the Supreme sees this world. They attain to the higher consciousness, and that's something which attracts them. That's something they would like to get. So we have a catch for gods. The gods are interested in getting a higher consciousness for themselves.
So Vladimir, even gods are not there. They have also not reached that, and we are in a way the medium for them to reach there. Is it that?
Yeah, we are invoking them. They are coming down. In the Veda, they are coming down. They are brought down by Agni. He invokes them and brings them down into our hemisphere, into our lower consciousness. We can explain this as we are rising to heaven and then coming down with those heavenly forces into our lower hemisphere, so to say, into our bodies, into our mental, vital, and physical bodies. But it is the same process. We have to bring those levels of those powers of consciousness for our transformation, because our purpose is a redemption of these fallen emanations. And this redemption, this change, transformation is evolution of consciousness.
Vladimir, Rashi asked me to speak, so I have to make sure I take my card when I can. So listening to you, all this sounds exactly like the teachings of the Gita at a higher level.
Absolutely.
It's exactly the same. Bhakti yoga and the divine and entering the surrender to the divine. And so there's a give and take, there's a reciprocation. The similarity is so stark.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you are noticing this. You will see that everything is built on the Veda, on the Vedic vision of the sacrifice. And Gita, Tantra, everything, but in a different language. All the philosophies, Vedanta, it's
Right.
all a bit one kind of particular perspective or particular way of saying about it, which kind of bewilders us. We do not know what it is all about anymore because we do not have this holistic vision of the Veda. But the moment we have it, we can see it everywhere in bits and pieces.
Vladimir, I have a question. Sorry, go ahead.
No, please, after you.
No, it is disconnected. I want to know the meaning of the word yajmana, its root, how it came, what does it mean? Just that one particular word.
Yajamana is participle present tense middle voice, Atmanepadam. That means the one who is sacrificing for himself. Literally, sacrificing Yajamana. The one who is sacrificing for oneself.
And what's the root word? Like, where has it come from? Like, what is...
From root yaj, from here yajna, yagya you say in Hindi. So yajna is this marvelous concept of the sacrifice. You remember we read this, what sacrifice means for Sri Aurobindo. It's a constant growth of consciousness and delight. It's not an destruction or torture of our body. It's opposite. It's an achievement. It's a higher achievement within the embodied state. Of course, people who are stuck to their own way of being, they don't want any change. They're comfortable with what they have. And for them, it may look like a torture or difficulty. That's another view on the sacrifice. When if you identify yourself with the body, you will see that it creates this sense of torture. But if you identify yourself with the spirit, you will see as a progress and growth of consciousness. Yes,
So
Ashish.
that, Vladimir, was my second observation. Basically, as I listened to this, the difference between duality and non-duality also seems to seems to converge. It's difficult for me to
Yeah.
express it in words, but I think they are the same things. They're not different.
Yeah, it's resolved. It's resolved in the dynamic way, not in the static way. That's our problem. We always try to resolve it in a static way, and so we arrived at some kind of Advaita, non-duality. But that is a mental way. Sri Aurobindo says Advaita is very mental. It's a mental resolution of duality. But duality is dynamic and can be resolved in dynamic sense by the dynamic truth. By the way, rhythm is the dynamic truth in the Veda. And this concept of the dynamic truth disappears in post-Vedic literature because this resolution by the sacrifice as transformation of our nature disappears from the concepts of Indian philosophy altogether. So rhythm and satyam become synonyms, pure synonyms, no difference between them. But not in the Veda. In the Veda, they are very different. Even in this invocation, Shanti Patra, Satyam Vadishyami, Ritam Vadishyami, Satyam Vadishyami. Why does he say twice if they are totally identical? I shall speak the dynamic truth and I shall speak the truth, the static truth. So I will express the dynamism of the truth and the static truth. Both I will express through myself.
What does that mean, Vladimir? Dynamic truth and static truth?
Dynamic truth is the truth of this resolution, of this duality, this redemption of our fallen beings. We took onto ourselves these fallen emanations. We built our bodies. Our bodies are not conscious of the divine, neither our mind, nor our vital, nor physical. So, and slowly, gradually, Yajamana, our psychic being which is within our heart, is illumining them, bringing everything what we have and offering it to the higher powers within us. And these higher powers, divine powers, these gods, they are invoked and they descend and they start changing our mind, our vital, our physical. We acquire more and more capacity to perceive the truth in manifestation.
It's also interesting because I was looking at my notes from our first sessions, September, October, and all that has suddenly become so clear.
Yeah.
With this, yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear this because this is a fundamental new understanding of everything, a new understanding of the old paradigm, so to say. Sri Aurobindo brings it. If Sri Aurobindo would not be there, I do not know where we would be. I don't see anybody trying even to explain this nature from the point of view of the spirit and spiritual development. And it's only in the Vedas we find total correspondence of nature and the spirit. Nature is the enterprise of the spirit and nothing else. Later we see this division in Sankhya on Purusha and Prakriti. Prakriti by herself, Purusha by himself, then they come together, something happens, and then they depart. You become mukta, you get mukti. So you leave the Prakriti. Prakriti falls into equilibrium, you disappear in the transcendental. This is not a resolution of the duality. It's what Sri Aurobindo calls the escape. The escape brings not the victory and the crown. So going back to the origin, leaving the nature without transforming it, it's not our purpose. Our purpose is the transformation of our nature here, bringing these fallen emanations back to their self-awareness. We have to transform our bodies, our minds, our vitals. They have to become luminous carriers of the divine consciousness. That's what we are here to do. And it's so obvious to all of us from another language, not from this. From this language, it looks like a little weird. But from a normal language, yes, we are always looking for improvement, for progress. Why? Because there is something inherent in us, inbuilt in us, intrinsic in us, which cannot but do that. We can't stop doing that. It's impossible for us, even if we try. That's actually the secret meaning of the karma yoga of the Gita. That's what he says. Even if you try to do nothing, you would not be able because, and he doesn't say in the Vedic terms, because there is Yajamana within you who will make you move, or you have to move. He speaks in more mundane language. You have to take care of your body. You will have to wake up, fall asleep. You have to do the routine every day, even that. Even sitting with closed eyes is doing, yeah? Because everything has its place and nothing you can do about it. It's a mental idea that you can suddenly fall into the non-duality and start doing nothing. It is not possible. The dynamic truth in you would not permit you to do so. You are here to do much. So why not to do it properly, consciously, instead of trying to escape and to do nothing? That's the whole dilemma of karma yoga.
Sorry, Vladimir, one more question. If this is the earliest knowledge, then did Vedas envisage for multiple religions?
Yes, absolutely. I'm totally kind of agreeing with you on this topic. There are many religions. I think all religions came from this vision, because it was pre-Chaldean, pre-Vedic tradition which Rigveda took, yeah? and represents. And that pre-Vedic, pre-Chaldean was combining both the realization in the physical nature by the spiritual presence and consciousness. And then, as Sri Aurobindo says, they had to split because the human resources were not ready. The human consciousness was too weak for this. It's a totally different paradigm, demanding much more than just doing one of those parts, or being totally engaged with nature, forgetting the spirit. That's the Western paradigm, the Chaldean paradigm, which led to alchemy and finally science, and trying to manage powers of nature, always managing powers, becoming efficient, delivering, doing things, more than knowing, more than being aware. And there is Indian paradigm which took direction towards the spirit, neglecting nature. Yeah. Brahman Satyam, Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. Yes, that's the statement of Shankaracharya. Brahman, the spirit is truth and not the world. The world is untrue. So here we have it, this split. Either you can keep up with the spirit or you keep up with nature. You cannot keep up with both. This is very difficult, it seems. That's what Satyavan tells to Savitri when he met Savitri for the first time in Sri Aurobindo Savitri. When I concentrated on nature, I forgot about God. When I concentrated on God, I forgot about nature. But now when you are here, the Usha, the Divine Mother, and we will see what she does to Agni, it will be in this hymn. When you are here, the golden bridge is seen. I can connect the spirit and nature. Finally, I can come back to the original paradigm of transformation of nature by the spirit. And that is what Veda represents. And this is beautiful. Here you will see in a very mystic language how these two, Agni and Usha, relate. Yad im ganasya rashanam ajigah shuchirang te shuchibhir gobhir agnih at dakshina yujyate vajayanti uttanam urdho adhayat juhubhih. When he has uncoiled the long cord of his hosts, strength shines pure by the pure herd of the radiances. The footnote, the cows of the dawn, Dakshina, the goddess of the divine discernment, is here a form of the dawn herself. For the goddess who discerns grows in plenitude and is yoked to her works. He exalted, she extended supine. He feeds on her with his flames of the offering. He is the Yajamana. He makes the offerings to the greater consciousness descending upon him. When Agni has awakened a long succession of his hosts, all his powers are being spelled out, as it were, having become pure, shines with his pure rays. Then the discerning power of the dawn becomes yoked to his work and her work, and that his work becomes her work, bestowing the plenitude upon him. It is on her who is now spread vast, he feeds standing high with his flames supported by the offerings. It is a description of the next stage of the relationship when Agni has fully awakened and uncoiled all his powers and hosts, has become fully pure, shining with pure radiances of the dawn. Then she discerns and grows in plenitude and is yoked to her. And now to his works also. For there is no difference anymore. She grows wide all over, and he stands high and feeds on her with his flames of offering. This picture explains the mentioning of the dawn approaching Agni to feed as cow the calf in the first verse. So finally he feeds on her and grows within her. There's a beautiful passage in several passages in Savitri. Let me read this because this is absolutely taken from this Vedic imagery. Its shape of person and its ego face divested of this mortal travesty, like a clay troll kneaded into a god. Clay troll kneaded into a god. It's quite an image. new made in the image of the eternal guest. This is also from the hymns I'm making references. It shall be caught to the breast of white force, and flaming with the paradisial touch, in a rose fire of sweet spiritual grace, that is she, the divine dawn, in the red passion of its infinite change. That's our fire who is feeding on the luminosity of the dawn. Quiver, awake, and shudder with ecstasy, as if reversing a deformation spell released from the black magic of the night, Tamasoni Ramochi, renouncing servitude to the dim abyss, it shall learn at last who lived within, unseen. The immortal among mortals, the shining Godhead released from the darkness, and seized with marvel in the adoring heart, to the enthroned child Godhead kneel aware, trembling with beauty and delight and love. But first the Spirit's ascent we must achieve out of the chasm from which our nature rose. The soul must soar sovereign above the form, and climb to summits beyond mind's half sleep. Our hearts we must inform with heavenly strength. Surprise the animal with the occult God, then kindling the gold tongue of sacrifice, calling the powers of a bright hemisphere, we shall shed the discredit of our mortal state, make the abysm a road to heaven's descent, acquaint our depths with the supernal ray, and cleave the darkness with the mystic fire. His soul breaks out to join the oversoul. His life is oceaned with the super life. He has drunk from the breasts of the mother of the worlds. This is the imagery we just mentioned. He feeds on her udder, on her breasts. A topless supernature fills his frame. She adopts his spirit everlasting ground, and the security of her changing world, and shapes the figure of her unborn mites. Immortality she conceives herself in him. In the creature the unveiled creatrix works. Her face is seen through his face, her eyes through his eyes. Ad dakshina yujyate. Her being is his through a vast identity. Then is revealed in man the overt divine. This is the magic of this transformation, of the union of the calling force and the answer, of the grace which comes to the call which answer. Sri Aurobindo starts the book of the mother with this. Yeah, there are only two forces: the call, which aspiration within the heart, and the grace which answers to this call, which can transform this world. Yes, somebody switched on. Prito, it was you. Vatsa.
Yeah, yeah. So in the last lines, when it says that her face is seen through his face, her eyes through his eyes. So it's the distinction between Purusha and Prakriti. It like here she looks bigger and he looks like a form of her. And generally whatever we have read or seen, it's usually him in the form of him or her in the form of him. Here it feels like him in the form of her.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult to distinguish.
Absolutely, her face is the mother's face. The Divine Mother's face is seen through his face, yes. Through the face of the person, for Ashwapati in this case, who is manifesting the divine here. It is he is the fire here approaching her. Yeah. This is the same imagery of the Veda. And her eyes, through his eyes, are shining now. It's like Agni who is feeding on her and rising through her lustrous, and she is giving him all the support of the transcendental godheads which she brings with herself. She is the mother of the gods. She is Aditi, and all the Adityas she brings with her. Great, we can stop here today. We took 3 verses of the first hymn of the 5th mandala. So I just wanted you to know how slow we move studying the Veda. And every verse is loaded with this imagery. Every verse in the Rigveda is full of these, mystic suggestions. Every verse can open the whole vision of our real life here on earth. But we have to do this work. We cannot just rush through the verses and feel that we have understood something with our minds. It's not enough. It goes deeper. It has to touch our deeper being within. And then Veda plays its role as the book of knowledge, and not just book of rituals. Great.
I only understood the last 4 line. In the creature, the unveiled creator X works. I only understood those 4 lines, Vladimir, honestly. But it seems that those 4 lines are actually the defining principle for everything. We can use it as a reference. For example, when you look at a face, you look at a person, and if you in your head you remember this, then you will be able to kind of transcend everything that plays between mind and ego and personality of like the earth body. And it can be like this. If this becomes like a acting principle of our behavior, then it becomes it becomes like a living knowledge, I feel, instead of something that we're just studying. So it's a very good clue, according to me, I feel today, that if we always realize my face is actually the face of Agni, but actually it is the divine mother. And so I can always, at any moment of life, there is a stress for a meeting, or the milk just boiled and went away. The tiny tiny things, when you be constrict and become small, at that moment probably we can remember this, and then kind of come back to expanded state and just, I mean, I do you get what I'm saying? I mean, I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah. Yes, I get you. This is very practical. Absolutely true. This is not a theory. Theory doesn't make sense here much. It's only for our practicality that we combine our inner and outer worlds, that we live by the laws of the inner worlds outside. We
I don't know. Practicality doesn't work with me. Maybe because I'm crazy and artistic that way. Practical is too calculated for me. But I feel more like embracing it as a living knowledge. I mean, that has been probably my whole, I guess, in this study, my whole plane, that I want to live it. I don't want psychological interpretation. I don't want theory. I want to live it. So for me, this is a nice nugget, is what I was saying.
Right.
But
Well,
what you say, Rashi, is also practical. No, I mean, that's what is
it's
practical.
another word for
I
it.
don't know. It's just going, like my bias about the practical world. I mean, you cannot be a theater artist without being practical. But you know how everybody's so practical at all times. It's annoying. That's that. I just have to think about this word. You could be dreamy and execute life. I mean, I feel.
Yeah.
I agree.
And actually, Sri Aurobindo even uses this. He says that the Vedic language, the Vedic knowledge um, is, we can say, almost utilitarian, because it is applicable to our life constantly. It is not something they want to say, theory or philosophy, that we would be uplifted in our thinking and self-consideration. It's not about that. It's about really making a change in our perception of ourselves and the world. Constant change, a constant presence of the divine perception within us, which is very practical, very practical. And actually, karma yoga had to be also practical in that sense. That's why he wanted to shift away from this Sankhya, from the philosophy, which is only viewing things right and not really living them right. He wanted to make it practical. We are looking also for practical application. We are considering our Institute of Applied Research and Integral Studies. We want to make applied spirituality. We don't want spirituality. We want applied spirituality. It has to be applicable to life. If it is not, it's of no use. Theory is good. Yeah, I may know everything in the mind, but if I'm not living it, if it doesn't change my life, what's the point?
When you say this, Vladimir, I was just thinking a while back that, like, thinking of it like there is, I mean, I'm Agni and I'm the face of mother and the Aditi. Then it makes me think that, oh, I should not eat anything bad, which is really harming me. And it comes down to very practical aspects of life. I should not be doing anything which is harmful for me, and everything around that.
Or if you have this vision, you will immediately see when something bad comes to you to say or to feel about others, you would immediately feel very uneasy, because that kind of alignment which you established in yourself will immediately shed some light on those distortions of other forces which try to enter and to possess you, yeah, to make you important in your eyes and belittle someone or judge someone, and you immediately feel that you are on a wrong track. You are again kind of going off that alignment with your true self. So that uneasy feeling will bring you back and will purify for your activities, bring more light into it. This is very practical. Very. Somebody asked Mother, but you see, can you give us something practical? This is interesting. Actually, it's literal. You are talking all the time yoga, that thing, change your life, something practical. And she says, you think that this higher consciousness is not practical? It is absolutely practical, in the highest degree practical. The higher consciousness, the higher it is, the more it is practical. And but one has to live it, of course. One should not just speak about the divine without knowing anything and living just ordinary life. And I believe that we are looking for that connection between the inner and outer. And that is integral yoga, integral, Purna yoga of the Gita, integral yoga of Sri Aurobindo. Great. Okay, I will stop here and close with mantra. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santo Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschit Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Namaste. See you.
Thank you, Vladimir.
Thank
Good night,
you.
everybody. Or good morning.
Good morning and good
Let
night.
Thank you.
Isha come in our life. Thank you, Vladimir.
Right. Namaste.